everyone. Welcome to another episode of Customer Success Talks, Real Challenges, Experts Advice. And today we have a special episode, a little bit different as what you're used to, but it's still full of insights and fun that we're going to have today with our guest. Naf is not able to join us today as he's on vacation, and I was not patient enough to wait for him. Sorry, Naf. But you all are here, and we're ready to start today's episode, which is titled Cracking the Code, Navigating the Customer Success Hiring Market. And for that, we have two special guests with a lot of background, experience. And one is a recruiter, passionate about customer success. And we have our guest as well, the other guest on the other side of the table, who has been a customer success manager since even that was a title. But who are we talking about? Just a second, be patient, because first we're going to start with Jean-Marie Schiraldi. And like I said, she has been a customer success manager since this was even called like that. And I love that. She started in the early 2000s, and so have around 2 decades, a little bit more of experience in customer facing roles. During that time, she had led multiple customer success teams and has been part of multiple hiring process since 2000. Jean-Marie, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you, Bivon. It's great to see you.
Same. Great to see you. And we have our second guest as well, Jean-Marie. We're not alone. And our second guest is Luke Bartram. He has 14 years of recruitment experience, 14 years. Perfect for what we're going to talk about today. And as a recruiter manager, he has had role as recruiter manager, head of recruitment, and now a founder of ABR, a company that helps organizations find the right customer success talent. This is today an episode full of success here from both sides. Look, thank you so much for being here with us today as well.
Thanks for having me. Great to see you guys.
Yeah, let's start, because we have different perspective here. We have the recruitment side, we have the customer success mind, and the candidate side of things. And that's why today's a special episode, because it's going to be divided in two parts. The first one we're going to talk about is the hiring process broken. And on the second one, we're going to focus about more into recommendation and strategies that our guests can give us to find that dream job, especially nowadays, which is the market is really complicated as it is. So let's start with the first challenge, which is focusing more into the economic and the market side of things. Why is it so complicated right now? Why is the landscape of finding a job in the hiring as a customer success manager has been so complicated? Not only with experience, but also without experience on both sides. There have been recessions and economy downturns that can make this more competitive. Based on your experience and perception, what is happening nowadays in the market that it affects job searching and hiring?
Yeah, great question. And it starts by kind of rewinding, I think, back to 2022. And I call that the year of kind of almost post-COVID euphoria.
Mm-hmm.
And don't get me wrong, COVID was still very much a thing. But we had a year of almost a bounce back. There was a lot of suppression during COVID, and money just wasn't being spent at the same rate. And when we came out the back of that, VCs, investors were, hell for leather, really, and really pushing on and investing in tech businesses. People were spending more money. So companies wanted to add more tech to their stack to start really kind of pushing on from their side, whether it was marketing technology, new business, or HR tech certainly saw a boom post-COVID, because remote working then became a massive piece of the puzzle. So we had this year of just hiring was at an all-time high. There weren't enough people to fulfill the requirements. Customer success managers were getting approached left, right, and center by recruiters, directly by businesses. And it was just a really great time to be a recruiter, I think, in kind of 2022. I speak from experience. And then we kind of moved into a new year. And I think October, November of 2022, you started to see things slow down. We certainly started to feel a pinch in the economy. Subsequent wars started taking place. There was just a lot of negative sentiment moving into the year, and companies started looking at that and reacting, and redundancies happened. Companies stopped spending money. There was a lot of nervousness, and what then happened is that supply demand shift of talent went from there's no one to fulfill these roles to, oh my God, there's so many people and we don't need to hire at the moment. So the market was flooded with talent. And don't get me wrong, there were probably companies capitalizing on the opportunity to maybe trim the fat with some underperformance in the business. It always happens. But the general sentiment last year was a lot of redundancies, not enough roles, lots of people looking, lots of frustration. And I think where we are today, so kind of fast forward to today, things kind of bottomed out middle to, I'd say, Q3 calendar year last year, and they're now starting to, I don't want to necessarily use the word recover, because I think there's still some way to go yet, and there are still lots of things that could happen. But it certainly feels from our side, the conversations we're having, the roles we're onboarding, that there is a shift, and it's becoming more difficult for companies to find great people, which is a good indicator that the market is starting to improve, not recover. So I'd say that's kind of where we are. That's my thoughts on it right now.
I can't go all the way back to 2022 like Luke did to talk about this. That was a great explanation, Luke. But I think for right now, you're going to continue to see some slowdown in job growth, just given the economic uncertainty, especially here in the States, right? Things are just, I think people are still just a little bit uneasy, right? And we have here at least, a tremendous, maybe not tremendous, but a big cost of living increase. So that puts a lot of pressure on people looking for work, right? Who now that impacts their salary, right? Maybe they were willing to work for, I'll just pick a number, $50,000. Now, given where we are with the cost of living, they need 60 or 65, right? And then the same thing happens on the company side, right? They were willing to pay 50, right? But now people looking for candidates are looking for more, for 60 or 65, just given the cost of living. So I'm not sure I completely agree that we're coming out of it yet. I think 2024 is at least the first half is going to be tough. But stick with it. I think I'll say this. I think things are improving. I think we have a ways to go. I think they're certainly better than they were last year.
Wouldn't be a benefit that companies are now believing a little bit more in customer success, understanding what is customer success, implementing customer success? Wouldn't that be something positive for today's market to have more options out there? Or it's just not related to?
I think you can't overstate the impact of economics and the cost of living. I think regardless of how companies feel about customer success, the economic downturn, at least in the US, is having a tremendous impact on hiring.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think that's seen in the UK as well. When you see a downturn, companies react quite quickly for short-term solutions. So they want quick results. And typically that comes from new business acquisition, as opposed to perhaps longer tail retention strategies that don't necessarily see immediate results. So sometimes, rightly or wrongly, dispersing some of the CS team and spreading the load, although it's increasing the pressure on your current team, it's an easier strategy for a business that's more palatable than adding more headcount for something that maybe comes later in terms of growth, renewals, etc. I think that's potentially why we don't see a kind of uptake.
This is going a little bit off topic, Mayron, so stop me if I'm changing the topic too quickly. But I think you bring up a really good point, Luke, and that is that the customer success department is not revenue generating, right? We're not sales. We're revenue protecting, right? We're revenue saving, but we're not revenue generating. So if a company is a little bit short-sighted, or they get too keyed into revenue generating, the CS team is often the first one to experience cuts. And it's unfortunate, because the CS team is really what is saving your revenue, right?
Yeah.
You're protecting what's already in the house. And that's a big deal.
Yeah. I think as well that kind of rewinds back to the point of this euphoria in 2022. There was this rush to hire. Perhaps the educational piece wasn't quite there yet for what impact customer success will have longer term within the organization. So money comes in, people chase the next shiny thing. If it's not software, it's certain skill sets, it's certain people. And if you're not seeing immediate value because you haven't perhaps roadmapped what the return's going to look like from that team, it's difficult to justify value to the board of investors as to what these people are actually doing in the business if there's not quantifiable metrics. And we've seen that a lot. And I'd certainly say from a candidate's perspective, when speaking to individuals, it's really important that they own and understand their metrics. And if they can't, then sometimes fundamentally that's where one of the challenges has kind of come from within their position. So yes, it's a really interesting point. Really interesting point. We could probably go off on a real tangent about that. And
Probably could.
Oh, but this is amazing because it's given a eagle eye perspective or helicopter perspective of what is going on nowadays, at least as when we're recording January 2024, and gives also the perspective of those who might think about pursuing a new career in customer success to actually be prepared to what is coming. And for those who, like me, who are looking for something actively right now, understand better what is going on. And it's not only that because our role as a candidate, it means a lot as well. We have to do a lot of our homework. We have to commit to each interview. But then sometimes it's maybe motivating seeing all of what is going on. So it's good to understand and hearing both perspective of what is going on to see, okay, so it's my work as well, but this is the conditions that are happening now. That's a good opening for the second challenge. The second challenge of the day of part number 1 is actually a hiring structure, not a well-defined hiring structure. And me as a candidate, I have seen that when applying and going through all the phases as well, that sometimes there's a little bit of confusion internally, and that we can see even from the outside. And no clear job roles, responsibilities, onboarding processes are critical components for the hiring process as well. Many companies, especially startups, of course, or those hiring customer success managers for the first time, can struggle with establishing a clear hiring structure. And here, if I'm not mistaken, Luke, is where your company comes into place, right? To help those companies build that hiring structure. So I want to start with you again. The question that I have from your experience, how do unclear expectations from internal teams affect the recruitment and the onboarding of customer success professionals? Like, what steps can organization actually take to ensure that the expectations and everything is well designed and consistent?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, I guess to explain, the way our business operates, so we're a recruitment business within the UK, right? But where we go a little bit further is because I come from a background of internal recruitment. I've helped build internal recruitment teams for tech businesses as a head of internal recruitment. We can offer perspective. So we've worked client side. So we understand the challenges of, onboarding and retention and getting that bit wrong, and the longer term impact that can have, not just on retaining that individual, but also retaining your customers when hiring customer success. You put the wrong people with your customers, it's a negative impact all round, right?
Yeah.
I think where companies sometimes get it wrong, it's really down to defining what impact this role is going to have within the organization. And it probably goes back to what I said earlier about hiring for the role, not hiring almost for what the role is going to impact in the business. So, when you hire a salesperson, it's pretty straightforward, isn't it? Right? We need to generate an extra £500,000 of revenue this year from new business acquisition. So we need a BDM to do that. And you have marketing, you know how many leads they're going to generate to fuel that person. You have an SDR team. It all feels really well defined. And sometimes with CS, the roles are you're going to look after a book of enterprise customers. They don't really focus on what value metrics are going to plug into that. So I think first and foremost, the numbers are going to be different for each organization. So I don't want to state some generic facts and figures, but I think Jean-Marie can definitely maybe talk about your organization and what metrics would be important to you. But I think have some very clear success metrics that individual is going to work towards. And then you can kind of reverse engineer it when searching for them. When you go to market, you've got a really clear profile beyond a generic job description of someone that's managed a book of business, because you could take anyone from account management, maybe a sales crossover role. But if you want someone that's truly embedded in CS, you need to have those outcomes defined before you even go to market, right? So I think that's really important. And from an internal perspective, they need to be very clear about the impact this person's going to have on the business. And that will enable them to support that individual when they come in, because customer success it's not an isolated function. And obviously I'm biased because it's the area that I focus in on, but I feel like it's certainly the spine of a business, and it's connected to every element in the organization, from product, giving feedback from the customer's mouth about the product, new features and benefits that might add value, the support team, what are we hearing frequently from support, what are the constant challenges. So I think it's really important that the value of the team is sold into the business through the leader that's heading up that function. So that would be my kind of 2 P's worth on that.
It's amazing. Really into what is going on right now. And of course, we have 2 perspectives. We have the UK and the US, but this still can apply to a lot of what is going on in general, of course. And Jean-Marie, I'm really curious to hear your perspective on this one.
So I think the last thing you said, Luke, was I think everything you said was right, but the last thing really rang true for me, which is that the CS team has influence and impact throughout the company, right? It affects sales, it affects product, it affects marketing, it affects support, it affects engineering, right? All of these things come into play with CS. So it's really important when you're talking about hiring for CS, it's really important to get buy-in or alignment from all of those teams, right? What are their expectations? What are they looking for? Not that you're necessarily going to hire exactly the person who engineering wants, but understanding the alignment between engineering and CS is really important, so that you factor that into that hiring process. I think some of the challenges that we see are attracting the wrong talent. If your job description is vague or unclear, you're going to get someone that fits maybe a piece of the. Yeah. I'm a New Yorker by trade, so my hands are coming up. I should probably sorry about that. Attracting the wrong talent, and that happens when your job descriptions are weak or unclear. That's a huge mistake. Not taking company culture into account. I think company culture is probably, for me, the number one most important thing, is making sure the person you're hiring fits your culture, because if they don't, it can unbalance the whole company, right? So I think that's a big deal, and really understanding the expectations for hiring. Now, in terms of mistakes that I think you asked about mistakes too that companies make. Yeah. I think onboarding is really critical. So just like onboarding your customers to your product is critical, it is really important that you onboard your candidates into your company, right? You need to watch out for confusion or frustration or misunderstandings, right? Not knowing, really understanding customer success, right? I take care of customers. I have a book of business that I manage, but understanding what that means, right? It's not a phone call once a week or, taking some notes and filling out a spreadsheet. It is really being your advocate for your client. What does customer success mean to your company, and hiring the right person who's going to fill that role.
Amazing. Look, were you going to say something?
No, I was actually taking notes and just agreeing. I think it's great.
Yeah. So anyone listening to this, pause, go back and replay, because all of these insights given by Luke and Jean-Marie are really, really important to keep. I always say that our podcast is aiming to people transitioning to customer success and customer success managers. But if there's anyone from leadership as well hearing this, or even an individual contributor having this idea can even improve the existing processes that you're having in your company, like making sure that you have the right talent and the alignment between teams is really, really important. But I'm wondering, because when I apply to different jobs, I always see that there are at least 3 to 5 stages, talking to four to five people into tasks. Is that long process because of how complicated it is nowadays to find a job related to, or is it just because companies really want to make sure they hire the right person? I'm wondering if this is actually a best practice to have that long process that sometimes takes even 4 weeks and so much energy from candidates.
I went to work for a company a few years ago, and the hiring process went from the interview process took from October to May.
Wow.
October to May. I was an individual contributor. I was not a manager. I wasn't a senior manager. I wasn't a director, wasn't a vice president, wasn't an assistant vice president. I was a CSM, not even a senior CSM. Took from October to May. I must have had, I've lost count now, but I think it was like 7 or 9 interviews with different people. I think that's borderline criminal to put a candidate through that. I think it's unnecessary.
Yeah.
I think it is. I think it's pointless. Another job I interviewed for, I talked to 3 different people, and it took maybe 2 weeks. I think that's normal, right? Talk to the person who's going to hire you. Talk to, maybe depending on the size of the company, right, the CEO, or someone in leadership, and maybe talk to the support team, right? Because you interact with support a lot. Beyond that, and the only person really who's checking for skills should be that manager, right? The rest of the interviews should be cultural fit, in my opinion.
Yep.
So, I can see 3 people, 4 people, maybe cultural fit, maybe a personality test, those personality tests, if you have to do those, fine, right? They're interesting. I don't put a ton of stock in them, but there's some truth to them. But there is no reason to put a candidate through 4, 6 weeks, months of interviewing at an individual. I don't think it's necessary at any stage, but especially an individual contributor. It just shouldn't happen.
Yeah, agreed. And I think to jump in on that, companies are probably just a bit more risk averse at the moment when it comes to hiring. And I believe the commitment to hire is there. They're just nervous about getting it wrong, because the leader is probably, turn that down, the leader in the organization has pressure to get this right now, because there is a bit of a spotlight on customer success and what value it's bringing to certain organizations. And I do, not to go off on a tangent, I do think the understanding has come forward so much in the last couple of years, but there is still a spotlight because of where we are economically, etc. The things we discussed earlier. So talking about the hiring process, I'd say we're fairly strict in terms of how we operate as a recruitment business. When we start to talk to organizations that have really lengthy processes without really a reason behind it, just, we want to get this right, it's quite concerning. And they're the types of businesses we wouldn't engage or work with. We would work with them to improve and show value, but we certainly wouldn't put a candidate through an 8-10 stage process. I mean, I've seen worse. I've seen 12+ stages, and there's some really well documented bits on LinkedIn of a certain company that just their process is insane. Anyway, moving on from that, but my sweet spot, I think what works really well for businesses, and I agree with Jean Marie, is having probably 2 to 3 stages over 2 to 4 weeks, depending on kind of diary availability, alignment. We always say 2 to 4 weeks is the sweet spot of filling a position. And that first call is almost a chat with the manager. I always think that's the best cultural alignment you can get. It's just to have a conversation around your background, experience, expectations. And it's a 2-way session to see if you gel with that person. Can I see myself managing this person? Can I see myself working for this leader? And then I think it needs to get into more of a formalized process. And depending on the opportunity and the level, I think a skills assessment isn't necessarily a bad thing, but not a labor intensive go away. Here's what we're looking to do this year. We want you to build a 30, 60, 90-day plan. We want all of your insights and analytics and hours of investment, when really it should just be take a scenario you've worked to before, close link to what we do, and then present it back to us. Maybe QBRs are a really important part of the role. It's something you want to really increase in your business, and you want to see someone, how they deliver a QBR. So do that based on a scenario that you've done previously. Bring that in and present that, because it's testing how they present, how they come across, how they look at data, how they deliver that feedback in a comfortable, non-role play setting, because it's based on live data. And we don't need to talk about hiding client information, like they'll do that naturally. But I think that's the type of interview process that makes sense. And it goes back to defining what you're looking for within the organization. If you know the outcomes this person's going to deliver within the business, the value they're going to add, like build your process around that, because that's what you're recruiting for, not a generic job description. Because every customer success manager you speak to, unless they're completely tech touched and they don't speak to customers, they're going to interact with businesses, right? So be really particular. We want an enterprise CSM that's used to managing X size accounts. They're focused on delivering fantastic QBRs. You'll be meeting your customers on a monthly basis. You'll be traveling here. You'll be working on a high tech platform. Give really defined information that they can then relate to and deliver a really exceptional interview. And I think that's the bit that we need to focus on, not generic long interviews, because you don't really know what you're looking to hire. So just bring loads of people into the process to elongate what needs to be 2 to 3 stages maximum.
And as long as it goes, there's possibilities to lose the candidate as well.
Absolutely, yeah. But I think that's probably one of the challenges right now, where there is perhaps a perception, and it's a false perception in a lot of cases, where there's just a lot more people on the market. Clients want to test, they want to put people through more processes because it enables others to enter. And I use a lot of analogies, but I always say to businesses, if you're interviewing someone you really like, then why elongate that process? Because the good feeling starts to disappear. And it's a little bit like dating. There comes a point when you're dating, when there's someone you're really into that you either commit to or you continue dating. But at that point, you're going to destroy your chances of that becoming a permanent thing. So you have to stop and commit. And if you don't commit, you have to be prepared to lose that opportunity. And it's probably not the best analogy, but
no, I was going to ask, should we give the kiss on the first date or not? I was just about to.
I think no. And actually, if you relate that to a position, right, a job opportunity, then just to be clear, then kissing on the first date, offering the job immediately.
Yeah.
If I was the candidate, I'd be nervous about that. It's a bit keen, isn't it? So I think you still, and it's funny, some businesses will say, we love this person, we want to offer them the role. And our immediate feedback, maybe 10 years ago as a recruiter, I would have just gone, fantastic, I'm going to call them and offer them the job. But as I've got a bit older and wiser in recruitment, I know that this is very much a two-way process.
Yeah.
And it's important that both sides sound each other out, and they both organically reach a point of, I could really see myself working here, and actually this person would be fantastic for us. So we would prefer to encourage a business to at least have 2 stages and cross-company interaction, as opposed to just a quick, they're fantastic because they're ticking a lot of boxes, which might be to my downfall sometimes.
Look, thank you so much for those insights. I have another question. Of course, I always have questions. I'm so curious because this is a really interesting topic to talk about. And when hiring someone who is junior versus hiring someone who is aiming for leadership or has already experienced before, the playground changes a little bit, right? Jean-Marie, in your case, how does it change when it comes to the description of the job, to when it comes to the phases of that as well? Just to give a general picture for those transitioning to and those who are aiming to have something more in the future.
That's a tough question. The the process is largely the same, right? Whether you're hiring a junior person or a senior person, your job description has to be, detailed. It has to be um, clear and concise. You can't use, overly technical words, API, CRM, SaaS. These are words people understand, but it needs to be not filled with these acronyms, right? I think that the challenge is really around how candidates present themselves and what has to happen. Now, a senior candidate going for a senior job probably has, an easier time, right? I think a junior candidate going for a position is tough today. I know that's the case for you, Bayron, right? It's hard. I don't think this is the case with you specifically, but sometimes you get candidates who just think, I deserve the job, right?
Yeah.
I've thought about being a CSM, and so, now I'm going to be a CSM, right? It's not that easy. You don't just, a CSM, a customer success manager, is really by definition a senior role. You really don't come out of college and find, your first job as a CSM, because you need customer support experience. You need customer service experience. You need to know how to talk to customers. You need to know how to, meet a deadline and, create presentations and provide QBRs. These are things that you don't inherently know at 22 or 23 years old. So generally, CSM positions are for, I hate to use the word older, but older professionals, right? That doesn't mean you can't break into the CSM role. I think you can, but you have to have some client-facing experience, right?
Yeah.
And you have to be willing to do the work to get the job, right? That means understanding the company you're going to go interview with, right? Understanding the people you're interviewing, right? Read their LinkedIn profile, look up what other companies they worked in. What did they do there? What were their roles? What groups are they in on LinkedIn? What do they read? Who do they follow, right? What does the company follow? What other companies does that company follow? What does that CEO do, right? It can be hours of prep work that you have to do. Candidates can't walk into a position and think, I have a 3.8, a 4.0 coming out of college, right? They should hire me. It just doesn't work that way anymore. You really have to do your homework. And even senior people have to do the homework, right? You have to understand who you're interviewing with, understand the company you're interviewing for, and then have examples, right? The best interviews I've ever had were where people said to me, tell me about a time when X, right? Tell me about a time when a customer was really upset, and how did you handle it? What did you do? Right? What was the outcome? Tell me about a time that you lost a customer. Why did they leave? How did that affect you? What did you do? Right? So if you don't have that experience, you can't talk to that, right? But there's a lot of ways even a junior person can say, well, I was working at Macy's, right? Or Harrods, trying to think of a UK company, right? And one time this customer came in and wanted to return something and didn't have a receipt, and they were very upset, right? If you can tie your story to something relevant, right? That matters. Being able to think on your feet. All of that's very important. I'm not sure I completely answered your question. I think I got off on a little bit of a tangent, but it's really important that both senior and junior people do their homework. It is not enough to read a job description and show up for an interview.
No, I totally agree, because what I'm here is being curious, and it doesn't matter if you're starting or you are a president of customer success, director of, you need to be curious. Look, I think I interrupted you, right?
All I was going to say, what we typically find when recruiting more senior positions, and even sometimes your kind of team leads, heads of to VP level, it becomes more of a mutual conversation. about the strategic direction of customer success within the business. So instead of filling a role, so a CSM will typically in a larger team form part of that structure, right? Whereas a leader will go in and help define and build and kind of ideate and deliver a strategy around what customer success is going to look like. So I think the difference in almost like interview style is one is very much, okay, I need to show I'm capable to deliver as a customer success manager. So you relate back types of companies you've managed, situational interview questions, that type of stuff. Leadership is more about where we can take things based on what we're getting from the 2-3 stages of interview that we've kind of gone through. And I think that's probably when we're talking, 120 to kind of 200K salaries, when we start to get into the, much punchier level, the expectation for probably more of a strategic interview process comes into play. And you do need to start to see some of that road mapping earlier on. And I'm not talking about war and peace, everything being laid out, but the expectation changes a bit, I think, where seniors will start to, based on what I know today, this is where I would start to focus some energy. And it will be very high level. It might be, okay, you've got 10,000 customers and we know that half of those are going to be tech touch. You don't have any tech touch sort of programs in place at the moment. So this is the stuff we would look at high level. So that type of thing, I think that's where the differences come in.
Yeah. Amazing. I cannot end this first part with those better than what you're saying, Luke, and Jean-Marie as well. We have given a lot of really amazing insights into the market. It's like having it's two spies in the market right now, and just giving all of what they have seen during a lot of years of experience and two different perspectives. Love this. It's amazing, but this is not ending yet. It's just ending this first part, which is titled, "Is the hiring process broken?" Well, that will be something that you will determine with what we have talked today. And now we're going to jump into the second part of this episode.